Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy birthday to you, too. Mr. Barofsky, thank you very much for your report, and I read with great interest the story in the Washington Post yesterday where the lead paragraph says many of the banks that got federal aid to support increased lending have instead used some of the money to make investments, repay debts, or buy other banks. I read at one point that back a few months ago that the Bank of America had taken $7 billion of the first $15 billion they got and increased their
Mr. Chairman, we can't hear our colleague, and it's important that we hear him.
Your mic on?
Yes, it's on. Maybe I'm not close enough.
Okay. Right.
Does that help?
That helps.
I read that the Bank of America took $7 billion of the first $15 billion they got and increased their investment in the Construction Bank of China. I don't think any of us ever intended that this money be spent in that way. And I think a part of the problem is that this legislation was rushed through and we weren't given proper hearings on it or a chance to offer amendments and things like that. But I can tell you all of the business people, all the small business people in Knoxville and East Tennessee have been telling me for months that what's being said at the top is not getting down to that level, that what the President and the Secretary of the Treasury have been saying under both administrations, where they're saying lend, 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 that these examiners on the local level are saying no, no, no. And in fact there was a cartoon to that effect in the Congress Daily publication that we get every day at each of our offices, showing the President and the Secretary of the Treasury urging the banks to lend and showing the banks with huge piles of money, and then these examiners on the local level saying no, no, no. And I've heard that from realtors, home builders, other small business people, bankers, from all lines. But I want to read a portion of a letter I received from Robert S. Talbot, who has been one of the most successful business people in Knoxville. He wrote to me, he said, "I've never seen anything like this in the almost 30 years I've been in the business world." And listen to this. He said, Whole Rob Investments, that's his company, is the mother company of over 50 partnerships and limited liability companies, all of which are involved in commercial and residential real estate projects. We have been in business for many years and currently own interests in 18 shopping centers and numerous other retail and residential properties. Our loan obligations consistently are in excess of $100 million, and we have multiple lenders with which we do business, large life insurance companies, regional lenders, banks. We are not currently in default with respect to any monetary obligation, nor have we ever been. Our business depends on access to credit, and despite public protestations by our government to the contrary, it has been our experience this year that credit is contracting. We have been told by numerous banks that unsecured lines of credit to developers are being frowned upon by bank regulators, and consequently we have been informed by SunTrust, Mountain Commerce Bank, and First Bank that they would not renew personal lines of credit. While Fifth Third did not technically extinguish our line, it was apparent to us that they did not want our business, and consequently we are in the process of extinguishing our lines of credit with them. This is what I'm hearing, except this is a stronger letter. But is this what you've been finding out in your investigation of all of this? Is this true of around the country, or is my area unusual in this regard? Because I'm hearing this from many, many people.
I think this tension does exist. I think we've seen it across the board. This, on the one hand, the desire for banks to do more and more lending, and on the other hand, the regulators' desire for banks to build up capital cushions against future losses, and it's a very real tension.
Well, and I also I've heard this from many bankers who say that they can't speak out publicly because they'll receive retribution from the examiners, and the situation will grow even worse.
Well, we did see this in response to some of our survey questions. Banks, our source of information for this is the banks themselves, who have come forward and have pointed out this tension. And it's also, frankly, it's natural. The stress test, and part of the results of the stress test was to encourage the financial institutions to raise additional $70-something billion. These additions to capital are that. They're additions to capital. Now, capital can be leveraged in certain instances to increase lending, but there is a tension there, and it is one from conflicting policy concerns.
I've written the top banking regulators twice to tell them, and those two letters were several months apart, to tell them that this situation is occurring in our area, and I hope that other members of the committee who are running into this in their areas will also write these regulators, because this money is not being used, I don't think, in the ways in which the Congress really intended for it to be used. Thank you very much.
Thank you.